Hello, everybody, and a warm welcome to the Eclectic Leadership Podcast. We have an amazing guest today, Hisham Elsaied, who is an ex-Fortune 500 HR director. He's an ACC coach, an author, international keynote speaker, who is based in Dubai, the United Arab Emirates, and he has been very busy developing leadership pipelines for enterprise and governments. He designs, develops, and leads transformation programs in both Arabic and English. Now, I know that I've simply scratched the surface, Hisham. A very warm welcome to you. And I don't want to steal your thunder. And why don't you please introduce yourself to our viewers that who are you? What are you doing? Where do you come from? Come on.
Thank you so much, Shehzaad, for inviting me today. It's my pleasure to be part of this podcast. And you have said a lot about me, but I can add a little bit more. I was born and raised in Egypt. This is where I originally come from. But I have somehow an international experience. So I worked across Fortune 500 organizations in HR in Egypt. This is where I was graduated from the university, then in Canada, in France, and finally in Dubai, in the UAE, worked across various industries, various cultures, from Japanese companies to American companies to Canadians to local here in the Middle East. So, and after 19 years of corporate, I find myself more passionate in developing others. And when you climb the ladder of the organizations, you are more managing up, they're managing down. So I found my time is going more into, let's say, in the nice word of saying it, is a stakeholder management. I don't want to say in politics, but in stakeholder management and setting expectations. So I have decided by the end of last year to fully dedicate my time to helping others to grow through leadership development programs, coaching and training. And that's what I have been doing on the site for years and for 1 year as a full-time.
This is brilliant. And you have a very diverse background through your upbringing, through your work. And although it's funny that they said it's Middle East, but it's actually in the middle of the East and West. And this whole cultural exposure that you have found, how did it shape your perspective towards leadership? We're getting into the nitty-gritty of things immediately.
Yeah, so yeah, my early definition of leadership was more about someone who is leading a group of people to move from point A to point B, and he decides what's point A and what's point B and how we can go there. But then, as I grew and as I moved across cultures and organizations, I found that this definition is really fluid and dynamic, and a good leader in one context might not be perceived as good in another context. And also I got to study situational leadership and study cultural intelligence later, and together merging all this knowledge, you find that there's no such a good universal definition of what a good leader is. It really depends on the context, the culture, and the situation itself. So a crisis, for example, will need a different kind of leader than a startup in a growth phase. It all depends on the situation and the context.
Very interesting. And while in your forming years of how you perceive leadership, you were yourself as a leader, did you ever have any role model in front of you who you really admired or you really wanted to imitate?
Well, even before moving to the UAE, I was looking very highly to Sheikh Zayed Al Nahyan, the one who established the United Arab Emirates, because when you look at before and after, this was just kind of separated families and troops in the middle of the desert, was not such much as now. When you look at Dubai and Abu Dhabi as one glamorous city, everyone wants to move there, they rank high on the happiness index. But all this happened in a very short time. We're talking about 30, 40 years, and in the lifetime of nations, that's not that much. So he had a vision, and that's what differentiates a good leader. He had a vision. He saw his country moving from that point to that point. And now his son, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, is now moving the country from an oil-dependent country to really a knowledge hub, not only for the MENA region, but a knowledge hub for all over the world. I live in Dubai with more than 200 nationalities, and people from all over the world would like to come here, do business here. It's safe. Doing business is easy. It's very diverse. It's very tolerant. So all this, when you look at where it was and how it was built, it really shapes how the vision of a leader can take a country from being not even a country, they were separated troops, to one of the leading countries in the world where most people, even from the first world countries, are aiming to come relocate and live and do business here in the United Arab Emirates.
Very interesting. And so, was there any change in the way you develop yourself, or is there any change the way you help others develop and discover their leadership skills? What was that turning point, or what is there any transition that happened in the meantime?
Well, that's a very interesting question, Shehzad, and I love the use of the word discover because that's really we usually look at things, especially when it comes to leadership, as an outside in kind of like there are some theories, there are some knowledge, there are certifications, there are things that I need to know to be a good leader, but in reality, it's the other way around. It's inside out. You need to look inside yourself. What feels authentic to you? What feels like yourself when you are doing it? Then yes, adapting it to different situations, adapting it to different needs is something else. But if your style does not feel authentic to you, if you feel you are just wearing a hat to be a leader or having two personalities, and we have seen this a lot, and I'm sure you have as well. People who wear a hat at work and a different hat in with their friends and a different hat in the house. This is not sustainable. And if your words and actions and thoughts, the three of them are not aligned, you cannot sustain this for a long time. You can make it for some time, but after some time, you will feel exhausted. So it is an inside out project. This was the transition that I had. I stopped looking at leadership as something that I need to learn. Definitely, I need to learn to read books, to watch videos, to take certifications, but I should start from the self reflection, from the inside out. What is true to me? What do I want to what kind of impact I want to make in this world? What are my values? What are my non-negotiables? When I start with those things, it's much easier to gain the outside knowledge and strengthen my core values, but not contradicting them.
Mm. So you have already mentioned a few very, very insightful statements. One is leadership is context dependent. So that is something very interesting. And of course, there is no universal definition of
Yeah.
leadership. That's what you have said as well. Now, my question is, does it make leadership is not comparable, I guess,
Mm.
but does it mean that whether or not have become the real leader or not in your own eyes or in the eyes of the people who you are taking charge of, does the confusion ever end? Or is it a continuous journey? Because
It is
there's no universal definition.
it is a continuous journey, and we also, while we look at the particular context, we have also to take into consideration the meta trends, because the whole knowledge economy is decaying. It's no longer about how much do you know. There's no such, your expertise is not as valued as before. We are an AI era and everyone is using AI, everyone's using ChatGPT. Before, when I did my master's, for example, it took me weeks and months to do research. I had to have access to a library, and this library gave me books, and I go through the books. Now it's not like that. So the access to knowledge is much easier. If you use any of the tools around you in the AI, they can get you all the resources, the citations in the style you want, in the thing you want, and validate them. So the advantage or the unique advantage that's shaping right now is not how much do you know, how expert you are. That will it's becoming redundant, and it will become absolutely obsolete very soon. It won't matter how much do you know. It's about the practicality, how you can utilize this all knowledge, filter them, make a noise reduction filter, know what exactly do you need to do now, and get the people around you or your team or the people you work with to get the maximum out of it. This will be the new definition of leadership. You will not be the most knowledgeable person in the room as a leader. You will not be. The AI will always be more knowledgeable than you. So you have to have an advantage that's purely human, that cannot be replaced by an algorithm or by a machine.
Mm. Are you suggesting that the typical traits or attributes that we have been traditionally associating with leadership, resilience, active listening, empathy, nothing will be discarded, but are you hinting towards something new that we need to see in the syllabus of leadership development very soon. I'm just trying to get at that. I don't know what that might be, but is there something new that new leaders need then?
It won't be as new as in terms of that does not exist before, but it is the utilization of the existing skills, the how you will utilize these skills in a different way. As I said, it's no longer about that you are the expert, the go-to, because this was the classic definition of a leader. Like when I started working 21 years ago or 22 years ago, the team manager or the team leader was the one who is the expert in this field. And when we are stuck as a team, we go to him and ask, what can we do with that? I don't think that's happening now, right? Because when you're stuck, and especially with the newer generation, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they can just find out the information themselves. So they don't look to the leader as someone who has all the answers, to someone the most knowledgeable in the room, but is someone that really they need him in things that the machine cannot do for them. They cannot go to ChatGPT, for example, and do something. If the leader can do that thing, but if it's about knowledge, knowledge is there, but they need the support. They need someone who, as you said, active listening that can listen to them. They need also decision making because the machine cannot take the decision on behalf of you. So they need someone who can take the decision based on all these inputs. And again, do this noise filtering or noise reduction to know what's useful, what's not useful, and get all this information, put it in the context, back to the context title, put all this in the context of our situation and take the decision. Decision making is not a new trait to your question, but it will be utilized in a new way, not based on existing knowledge, but based on a lot of other skills.
Mm. That makes me ask you a question that, you have dealt with so many senior stakeholders, CEOs, many, many different leaders from different countries and backgrounds. Um, leaders supposed to be, or is leadership a generalist skill or it's a specialist skill? Like if you have a software engineer, that's a specialist. It's a software engineer. You have a graphics designer. You have an AI machine learning specialist. Very specialist skills. But the more it seems, the more you become a leader, is leadership itself is a specialist skill, or you are asking for a generalist skill there because you have to know a little bit of everything? I'm confused. Please help me
Well,
understand.
that's a good question, and it's new to me because I usually getting asked, is leadership is a trait that you are born with or not, or it's something that you can develop? And my answer is no, it's definitely something that you can develop. Yes, some people are more talented than others, some people are more gifted than the others, but it's not that you have it or you don't have it. You can definitely improve it. It's at the end the skill. But whether it's a specialist or a generalist, it's a mix of both. It's not an either or. So yes, definitely it is a science in itself, but it's an art as well. So yeah, there are theories, there are frameworks, and there are tools, but this only is not enough if you don't have the skill, which can be developed again, to how to use all these things around you and apply it in your own context, you will still be missing.
Mm, fantastic. You also mentioned that three things need to be in alignment: a leader's words, thoughts, action.
Actions.
How to do it easily, or what happens when you don't do it? How can
What happened?
somebody?
Yeah, I will start with the second question. I'll answer the second question first. So what happened when you don't do it? You erode trust, simply. Because if you're saying something and you're not doing it, your team will not trust you. Yes, the thoughts part is not accessible, so most probably people will not know what are you thinking of. But when it comes to especially the part of words and actions, this is very visible to the external world. So if they are not consistent, the trust will be lost. How easily you can do this? It's self-reflection. If it can be coaching, but it's mainly self-reflection that you sit with yourself. What I said today in the meeting, is it what I believe? Is it what I will do? And everyone who works in the corporate world for a long time will see that it's easier said than done, right? Because yeah, the leader will say a lot of good words. Basically, most of them will see the same thing, like they will say the same things about how we need to reach that point on what do we need to do now, KPIs and all that stuff. But are they really living these values? Are they really thinking the same, or they are just also taking a top-down approach? Like at the end, the leader he has another leader, or there's another layer behind it. So maybe he's translating a message that's not convincing to him. His thoughts are
Mm,
not aligned. Maybe words and actions, yes, but the most difficult part will be the thoughts. that he's really believing. And that's the vision part when I talked about Shehzaad. Like he had that vision. It's his belief. It's not only about words and action. His thoughts were there and his words were there and actions were there. And that's why we see the results. So after those three things, it comes the results. If the three are aligned, you will easily see the results.
That's interesting. And now, from your experience, from especially from in the region where you are, it's a confluence of so many cultures, so many corporates. What are the few challenges, the leadership challenges that you see that is really that really makes you frustrated or possibly gives you hope? I don't know, but what are some of these challenges in contemporary leadership? And that can be in business or in politics. But how do you see that?
I think one of the most underrated, I'll say, challenges to leadership, and I know that people started talking about it recently more than before, but it's still not talked about enough, is unconscious bias. Because we all think we are rational, we all think we are logic, but in reality, the human being is an irrational creature. We don't take decisions purely by logic or 1 + 1 = 2. We have a lot of gut feeling, and it's useful sometimes. Don't get me wrong. I don't mean that gut feeling is a bad thing, but thinking that we are always very rational and we are not biased and we are very fair, we, including myself, that's not true. So we have to be always self-aware, checking, adopt critical thinking to ensure that what we are doing and what we are saying might not be the ultimate truth. Even as leaders, even as a people of authority, yes, sometimes the authority also gives you this delusion of or illusion of that you are always right because people around you are always clapping their hands, are always thanking you. They always think you are insightful, you are giving them the insight. But this self-reflection needs to happen. The more authoritative you are, or the more in a power place you are, the less objection you will get. But this shouldn't stop any leader from self-reflecting on himself and on his actions. And if it's really he might be wrong, may I be in a knowledge illusion.
Mm,
Maybe I am not taking the most right decision in that moment, but just people around me are afraid to challenge me, or they just don't want to lose their jobs. As simple as that. So they don't want to say anything to my
mm.
words and my direction and my vision.
That's interesting. And so, from your perspective, the leadership that you were trained on, or the way you impart the knowledge of leadership to your clients, to your peers, to your colleagues, to what extent this statement is true that that has predominantly been a Western lens of looking at leadership, service, values, integrity. Are there any other alternative perspectives or lenses to look at leadership to arrive at the same destination but through different means?
To what extent it is 100% correct? All the theories, the frameworks, everything is coming from the West and dominantly the US. So even when we look at, I was doing my research soon, and when we look at the studies and numbers, it says 60% of US leaders, 58% of the US leaders, 70% of the US, like most of the research is happening in this part of the world. And therefore, most of the theories are driven out of this part of the world. And I'm not saying that the Middle East is a different word. It's not. At the end, the human beings are human beings. Yes, they manifest in different ways, but the needs are the same. Their aspirations are the same. But what we are missing is the redefining the definitions themselves. And I just had this conversation last week in a panel, and I was saying that we are taking the definitions for granted and we are moving to the next level after the definition of how to implement them. But we need to redefine the things according to the context. When we say empowerment, what does empowerment mean in the Middle East context? What does it mean in the US context? Not the same thing, not exactly the same thing, at least. It's different. When we say vulnerability, for example, if the leader cries in front of his team, how much that's accepted in different contexts? What will be the consequences? In one environment or in one culture, in one context, it might be seen as he's just a human being. In another environment, this might erode the trust or saying he's not capable. It can reflect incapability. And there are some cultures, and not only Middle East, there are some cultures that if this happened in that culture, it's a big thing. It won't be as easy as, or it won't be reflected that he's just a human being and he's tired or he's taking too much. Yes, maybe in the US context, yes, in a Western European context, yes, but our main issue is the definitions. How do we define? We take the definitions and we try to implement them without stopping at the definitions themselves and try to know what do we mean by empowerment? What do we mean by vulnerability?
That's the definition needs to be challenged first. That's what you're saying
Yes,
that.
yes,
And it's also the key thing that I think the recurring theme, what I really find very interesting is you're focusing more on context and not exactly culture. In many parts,
yes,
many other literature, they focus too much on culture, trying to stereotype a whole nation into boxes. But what you're saying makes a lot of sense that it all depends on a contextual level. The same definition
yes.
can change if the context is right.
Exactly. It's not only about the culture as in terms of nations, because it also depends on the industry and the phase of the business. So if you talk about military, for example, even in the most lowest power distance country, you won't find the military as a flat organization. You won't find it as voting if they should go ahead in a battle or not. It's a very high power distance. And on the other way around, go to a startup, even in the most high power distance countries like India and China, and in this country, the startup, it's like the startup in the US. It's the exactly same environment. People are sharing, they go casual, they can challenge their bosses, they can define the direction. So it's not about the nations as, and you perfectly put it right, Shehzad. It's not about putting people in boxes that you are from a high power distance culture and you are from a low. No, it
Yeah.
depends on the context, the business, the industry, which phase of the business, what do you want right now? When the COVID-19 hits, for example, even the most low power distance and individualist society had to implement rules, had to cut this freedom down and say, you cannot move. You cannot leave your house, which is a very different thing that usually will not happen in an individualistic democratic society. But it was a crisis time. So the context it changes and the dimension changes at the same time.
I know that you have a hard stop in 10 minutes, and I also have a feeling that we might have to have an episode 2 with you of
I
this
would love
interview,
to.
which I'm sure our viewers would really love because we don't want to hurry through our questions. There is so much to ask you. I have 3 questions as well, just to manage your expectation and viewers' expectation before we run out of time. Um, how can somebody lead without power?
That's one of the most difficult things because usually when you have the power, automatically people will obey you or will listen to what you are saying. When you want to lead without power, it's not leading, it's influencing. At the end, you cannot dictate. So when you are running out of arguments, you are gone. You have to always have an argument and convince and influence. The decision is their decision. If you are leading the team, you can just say, okay, I'm done arguing. I've been talking for 2 minutes. This is what we will do. And the team will go and do it, even if they don't like it because you're the boss. But if you don't have the authority, you always have to be influencing their decision, but not taking the decision out. And influence is a different game. Influence starts first with the trust. If they don't trust you, you will probably have no influence as you, and the curve will go in parallel together. The more trust they have, the more influence you will have.
So that leads me to the second question is that while we are talking about leadership, that's the right thing to do. What about feedership? Like you're feeding back to the system, like a feedership, or you can also say followership. Is that something that we should focus on? That how do you actually become a trustworthy follower in the first place? How do you contribute to the system where you have a leader already and you also might not be having the aspiration to lead anyways? But how can you be a part of a overall ecosystem, maximizing your potential to the maximum, your capacity? Is that something that is worth looking at?
It is definitely worth looking at, but again, it is the definitions thing. So when we say
Mm.
you don't have the capacity or the willingness to lead, it's not necessarily that you are leading other people, because that's not the only form of leadership. We all the time focus on that, but it's also you can be leading projects, you can be leading initiatives, you can be leading yourself. Just taking yourself above the bed, motivated and going to work and delivering is leadership. If you don't have it, you will not do it. It's not only people management, because I don't believe in the word people management, because you cannot manage people. You have to build a relationship with them to work together. But peoples are not something that you can really manage. They are not resources. Also, I have another comment on the human resources word, because human are not resources. And now
Uh,
they are to start changing it and saying people and culture department and different names, just not to use HR as human resources, because they realize how offensive it is to say that human are resources. They are not your tools. They are not your buildings. They are not your assets. You human are not assets. They are very complex creatures with a lot of emotions, cultures, aspirations. Sometimes they are not in mood. Sometimes they are tired. Sometimes energy is down. They cannot argue. So they cannot. You cannot treat them as an asset or resource. They are partners with you in that business. They are actually the business. Even if it is a software or a tech company where the product is not human at all, but who's selling it, it will be a human. Who's marketed, it will be human. Who will have the vision for it, it will be the human. Who will decide the strategy, it will be human. So any business, disregarding what is it, it's all about humans. And humans are the business. They are not the resources of the business. They are the business themselves.
this is really fascinating, Hisham, when you say that. Yes, it's true. Even when I think about leadership, I'm immediately thinking leading people or taking care of people who are working with you. You're trying to make your vision a reality as a leader. But what you're saying is even yourself having a control on your emotions, on your conduct is leadership, self leadership.
Yes. Yes.
What you're saying, it doesn't have to be a human thing. If you're leading a project, that can also be a leadership as well. So there are the different ways of looking at leadership, and I personally think that that is not done enough. The
Mm.
way you are putting it, the angle from you're coming from, I think there it really needs a lot of exploration and making it seen like that. So towards the end, I wanted to ask you, what is that one attribute or quality or a keyword that is non-negotiable for you in when we talk about leadership to become a better leader? One thing that should be in the top three repertoire of any leader. What should that be?
Continuous learning. The landscape is changing faster than ever before. Again, then I don't want to repeat, but the knowledge economy is decaying, and it's not, don't rely on your expertise. You have to be always learning. And don't be ashamed from learning from people who are much, much younger than you with less experience, because they have a different view to the world. They might be knowledgeable in areas you, as a leader, or someone like me who's quite old with 20 plus years of experience, I was not exposed to what they are exposed to in some aspects. Yes, some areas I do have more experience, but there are other more, I would say, even more areas that they know that I don't know. So always be having this willingness to learn. Curiosity, like a kid, like any kid or child, anyone who has kids will understand when the kid go and touch something and say, what's this, how it works, tell me more. Like this curiosity and continuous learning mindset is what will keep you valid in the age where your expertise is not your unique selling point anymore.
Continuous learning and coupled with curiosity.
Yes.
That's fantastic. Hisham, I will have to let you go, I know, and I'm not satisfied. I know
And
that our viewers
we
are
can
not
have part
satisfied.
two.
We have to have a part two, and that is a public announcement that we are making now. That with Hisham Elsaied, and episode two will be coming very soon, and we'll pick up from exactly where we are leaving it today. That one keyword that we need for any leader is that of continuous learning. We'll pick it up from here. Hisham, but for today, I want to really extend my warm gratitude to you for making your time. I know you're very busy, you've got a lot of projects to look at. I'm feeling very enriched, and I'm sure that the viewers who are following us, who are viewing this episode, have really taken a lot of wisdom from your experience. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Shahzad, for having me. It is my pleasure, and I'm looking forward to the part two of this discussion. Thank you so
Let's
much.
do that. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Have a good day.